Light filtered through cracks in the shattered dome above. Dust motes danced in the silent air. The giant figure lay motionless until a spark of awareness passed through its mind. With a low creak, the metal in its joints began to shift. It rose. Slowly, limbs heavy with age and corrosion. The faint hum of dormant power pulsed through its veins of steel. It looked down at the cracked marble floor stained with green moss. A sense of loss filled its heart of metal. As if it had fallen from a great height, wind whispered through broken arches, carrying echoes of a long-forgotten battle. It stepped forward, each footfall sending a soft vibration through the stone beneath it. Tall pillars loomed on either side, their carvings worn smooth by centuries of time. Unreadable runes glowed faintly along the edges of the broken walls. The guardian reached out and touched a fallen statue, fingertips brushing cold stone as if greeting an old friend. Memories flooded its mind in fractured flashes. A blue-green planet, ships of light, voices calling its name. It tried to hold onto each memory, but they slipped away like water through its clawed fingers. A chill ran up its spine as a distant sound disturbed the quiet. It turned its head and saw a small ship gliding in the gray sky outside the dome. Engines hummed softly as the vessel descended toward the ruins. Wheels unfolding with a gentle hiss, light spilled through gaps in the stone walls, illuminating its towering frame in stark contrast to the broken world around it. The Guardian felt a strange stirring of hope as the ship drew closer. It had lain silent for ages, waiting for this moment, though it could not remember why. But now purpose thrummed in its circuits, urging it to move beyond the ruins. Tentatively, it stepped toward an archway that framed the ship in a perfect rectangle of broken stone. Crumbling steps led down from the dome to the rocky ground below. The giant paused at the edge, knuckles brushing against vines that crawled through the cracks below. Explorers in silver suits stood on the plain, their helmets reflecting the vast sky above. One of them waved a small flag of white and blue, a symbol of peace and invitation. They spoke into devices clipped to their gear, voices filled with excitement and fear. The Guardian heard its own name echo through the air and felt a tug of curiosity deep within. The explorers moved toward the dome, scanning the Guardian with blinking lights and soft electronic beeps. Scanners hummed as lines of data scrolled across small screens on their wrists. Numbers and symbols told them this was a being of great power and ancient origin. The lead explorer lifted a hand and spoke through a voice amplifier. "We come in peace and seek knowledge." A soft wave of relief passed through the engineer beside her as cameras clicked and recorded every moment. The Guardian studied them with glowing eyes that held no hate or anger, only a quiet strength. It lowered a heavy arm until its gauntlet hand hovered inches above the ground. Dust swirled in the space between them, settling slowly on the broken stone. A tense silence stretched across the open plain as both sides held their breath. Then the Guardian reached out and touched the ground, sending a faint pulse of light along the cracks. The explorers gasped as the light raced through the ruined floor, illuminating hidden patterns etched in the stone. Symbols glowed bright green and blue, tracing lines that led toward the edge of the world. The ship's sensors recorded every detail, capturing the unexpected display of power. The lead explorer knelt and pressed her hand against the glowing pattern, reading ancient words in a language half remembered. "The Guardian of Earth awakens to the call of hope and despair," she whispered. A shiver ran through the group as they realized the truth of her translation. The Guardian tilted its head and watched the small humans with gentle interest behind them. The ship's engine hummed steadily, a reminder of the fragile world they had come from. Above, clouds gathered in the sky, dark shapes moving like hungry beasts toward the ruins. The wind rose in strength, and the ground trembled with a warning of coming danger. Inside the ship, alarms blared with a shrill cry that broke the heavy silence. Red lights flashed across the cockpit and cabins in a frantic strobe. Explorers raced back to the craft, faces pale beneath their helmets. The lead pilot barked commands into a headset, voice sharp with urgency. The Guardian turned to face the ship, towering over its occupants like a silent sentinel. Missiles streaked across the sky in distant valleys below, impacts sending plumes of dust into the air. A deep rumble rolled through the plane, as if the world itself had groaned in pain. Engineer reached out to the Guardian and placed a hand on its arm, seeking protection. The Guardian bent its head and let her hand rest on its cold metal shoulder, offering silent reassurance. But before they could breathe relief, another sound cut through the air like a blade. It was the cry of the ship's alarm system, louder and more urgent than before. Screens inside the cockpit lit up with red warnings. Hostile ships detected. The pilot slammed a fist on the console, eyes wide as he read the data. Dark shapes filled the sky beyond the dome, vessels of war moving in perfect formation. They blocked out the light of the dying sun, casting long shadows over the ruins. The Guardian stepped forward, its massive form creating a dark silhouette. Against the bright sky, explorers clutched each other and stared up at the towering figure, hope and fear warring in their hearts. The pilot cried out, "Take us out of here!" But his voice was drowned by the roar of engines. As the hostile ships closed in, the Guardian raised its arm in a gesture both gentle and fierce. Lines of energy flickered along its armor, ready to defend the tiny humans it now called allies. The engineer shouted, "Trust him, he is our protector." But the pilot hesitated, shields activated around the ship, glowing blue shields that formed a bubble of safety. The wind howled as the first volleys of dark missiles streaked toward the ruins. The Guardian planted its feet firmly on the cracked marble and braced for the impact. In that moment, time seemed to stand still, the fate of worlds hanging in the balance. Then, a final warning sounded inside the ship. Unknown life form approaching. Through the hull window, the captain's eyes widened as the alarm blared. A towering shadow moved just beyond the edge of sight. The ship shuddered as it climbed from the broken dome into the thin sky. Orange engines glowed against the darkening clouds. Guardian followed in great leaps, each step shaking the air beneath. Behind them, the ruins of the old world lay silent, pillars and statues forgotten beneath moss and dust. Inside the hull, alarms had fallen quiet, replaced by a tense stillness as the crew gathered in the main corridor. Light from the windows painted long shadows on the metal floor as the crew stared at the silent giant moving beside their craft. Fear and wonder mixed in their eyes. They whispered among themselves. Some spoke of imprisonment, others of worship. The captain stood firm, voice steady in the hush. "He showed us mercy in the ruins. We must show him trust now," she said. A young engineer nodded and stepped forward, offering a hand to guide him to the console room. The Guardian's heavy footfalls echoed through the narrow halls, each step slow and careful to avoid damage to the thin metal beneath. The engineer led him to a room filled with glowing panels and humming drives. Screens displayed fragments of stars and data streams. The Guardian reached out with its gauntlet hand and touched a panel. Circuits hummed as the screens flickered. Lines of code danced across the displays like living rivers of light as its fingers passed over the controls. The Guardian's memory awoke in spark-like flashes. It saw a field of shattered ships under crimson skies, heard the roar of engines and the clash of weapons. It smelled burning metal and felt the tremors of worlds ripping apart. Crew members stepped back as images of ancient battles played across the screens. They saw titans rising to meet dark armadas. They heard voices chanting in a dead tongue, warning of a coming shadow. In the center of the room, a hollow projector glowed to life, casting a pale blue light that formed the holographic shape of a planet they once called home. The image trembled and expanded to show armies of ships black as night. They moved in silent ranks toward the world's cradle. The projector flickered and shifted to show a council of elders in robes of silver and green, their faces full of sorrow as they raised hands to the sky in a final plea. One explorer reached out to steady the projector as ancient words formed. Around the scene, lines of text in a language half forgotten scrolled through the air. The engineer leaned close and read aloud. "When the Guardian sleeps, The stars grow dark when he wakes, hope and despair entwine. His voice trembled as he spoke, each word echoing in the metal chamber. The Guardian tilted its head and listened, its glowing eyes reflecting the ghostly scene. A sudden hush fell as a hidden transmission crackled through the speakers. Distorted voices spoke of betrayal and fall. "Our doom draws near," the message repeated in a chorus of lost souls. Crew fell silent at the warning. The captain placed a steady hand on the engineer's shoulder and looked up at the Guardian. "He knows of this war," she whispered, "and he can help us now or destroy us all." Beyond the hull, a distant star winked out, a dark shape drifted into view against the gas giant's rings. The captain watched through the viewport as the shape grew larger. Engines of the shape pulsed with a crimson glow. The ancient message thrummed in the ship's heart. "Our doom draws near," it said again. And the Guardian stepped forward, boots clicking with purpose as it moved to face the unknown threat. Hope glimmered in the fading light as the Guardian and the crew flew. Away from the ruins, the fighters' engines thrummed like beating hearts. Below them, the broken world receded under a blanket of ash and dust. The Guardian stood on the deck beside the observation window, its metal frame tall and silent, yet somehow gentle in the glow of the setting sun. Inside the ship's common deck, the crew gathered around simple tables laden with warm drinks and soft rations. They were tired but relieved. Having escaped the first wave of hostiles, voices rose in low conversation, speaking of what had happened and what might come next. The captain watched them carefully, her eyes sharp with concern. She knew the Guardian held great power, but she also saw in the giant a spark of empathy that machines seldom showed. The engineer who had earned its trust earlier now approached. With a small tray holding 2 cups of steaming tea, she offered 1 cup to the Guardian, who looked down curiously at the porcelain vessel. Its glowing eyes reflecting the rising steam, she spoke softly. "This is our comfort on cold nights. It may help you too." The Guardian reached out and gently took the cup in its massive hand, careful not to crush it, and brought it close to where its faceplate might have been. But instead, it simply closed its eyes, as if tasting a memory. A hush fell over the room as the other crew members watched the unlikely moment. A machine drinking tea with humans, yet the scene felt strangely right. The Guardian's shoulders relaxed, and it exhaled a soft sigh of relief that rattled the metal plates in its chest. The engineer smiled and patted its hand before turning away to join others in the corner, at a nearby table. The ship's medic tended to a wounded pilot whose uniform was torn and stained. The pilot looked up and winced at the pain. "I thought I'd never see Earth again," he said, voice low, eyes haunted by memories of battle. The medic pressed a healing patch to his arm and offered him a soft gaze. "You made it. And if anyone can protect you now, it's the Guardian." The pilot looked toward the silent giant, his fear slowly replaced by curiosity. Outside the ship, stars began to emerge in the dark sky, distant lights shimmering like diamonds on velvet. The Guardian felt a tug in its circuits, as if the stars themselves were calling it home. It walked to the railing of the deck, metal feet echoing on the grated floor. Crew members stepped aside respectfully, allowing it space and silence. The captain approached and placed a hand on its arm. "We don't know where we're headed yet," she said, voice steady, "but we need you to be our guide, our protector. Will you stand with us?" The Guardian turned its glowing eyes to her and nodded once, a motion heavy with promise. That night, around a dim lamp, the crew held a small council, maps spread across the table with star charts and coordinates marked in red. They plotted paths to the next colony, a hidden fortress that held supplies and information. The engineer traced lines with her finger. "This route skirts the worst of the Dark Fleet, but it's longer. The other is shorter but full of enemy patrols." Voices argued the risks and benefits. The captain looked to the Guardian. "What do you think?" she asked, and silence fell, all eyes on the giant. The Guardian stepped forward and gently pressed its hand on the map. Sensors lit up the holographic display beneath. A soft glow emanated where its palm touched. The lines shifted and pulsed, revealing hidden paths etched beneath the surface of the chart. The crew gasped as they saw routes they had never noticed before, ancient corridors through asteroid fields, and nebulas where sensors failed to reach, safe passages thought lost to time. These paths were used by the first Guardians, the engineer whispered. They knew this galaxy better than any of us. The captain's eyes shone with gratitude. Then we follow your lead, she said, and the crew cheered softly, hope blooming in their hearts once more. In the following days, bonds formed between the Guardian and the humans, the crew showed. It their simple games, throwing small spheres across the deck that bounced on magnetic fields. The Guardian learned to catch them with surprising speed. Laughter echoed where only fear had lived before. They also told stories of home, fields of green beneath blue skies, laughter of children playing in streets, flavors of foods long forgotten. The Guardian listened quietly, its heart of metal warmed by the tales of life. One young pilot spoke of a sister waiting for him, eyes shining with tears. She writes me every week. She believes I'm doing something important, he said, and the Guardian reached out, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder, offering silent comfort. Yet, not all moments were light. The memory of the dark ships haunted every corridor, and the crew prepared for battle drills daily. Suits were checked, weapons loaded, shields tested. The Guardian joined them, learning the rhythm of human tactics. Its heavy form practiced aiming energy volleys from its gauntlet. Lights flickered as power surged through its limbs. During a quiet moment, the engineer led the Guardian to a small garden in a side bay. Living plants had been arranged in pots, green leaves and colorful flowers brightening the metal walls. She knelt to tend the soil. I grow these to remind us of Earth, she said, so we never forget what we fight for. The Guardian knelt beside her, towering over the little garden, and gently touched a leaf, its sensors tingling at the soft texture. A spark of joy lit its core. Night after night, the stars passed overhead, and the Guardian stood watch beside the bridge, its silhouette framed by distant suns. The crew slept, knowing they were safe for the moment. Then, one morning, alarms shattered the calm. Red lights bathed the deck. The captain's voice rang out. Hostile fleet on sensors. They've found us. Panic gripped the crew for a moment, but the Guardian strode to the railing, lifting its arm like a sentinel of old. Energy lines crackled across its armor, ready to defend. The engineer dashed to its side. Stand firm. Protect them, she cried, and the Guardian nodded, turning to face the looming threat. As enemy vessels emerged from the darkness, the crew gathered behind the Guardian, hearts pounding in unison, hope and fear fighting for supremacy. The giant raised its arm high, a beacon of defiance in the void. In that moment, the bonds between machine and human shone strongest. Thousands of miles from home, they stood together, ready to face the coming storm, and the Guardian understood fully its place among them, protector, ally, and friend. The ship drifted in silent orbit around the desolate moon, its hull bathed in pale light from distant stars. The Guardian stood beside the command deck window, eyes glowing softly as it stared at the rocky surface below. Ancient inscriptions carved into the craters whispered of hidden outposts and sleeping weapons. The crew gathered around a central table where star charts lay spread, fingers tracing lines that led into uncharted space. A soft chime echoed through the deck as the engineer activated the holotable. A three-dimensional map of nearby systems shimmered in midair. Constellations shifted to reveal secret pathways. The Guardian reached forward and placed its hand on a glowing glyph etched into its own armor. Symbols pulsed under its palm and projected a new route onto the star map. The crew gasped as corridors appeared between asteroids and nebulae where sensors could not penetrate. The captain leaned in close, her brow furrowed with determination. This path could lead us to the lost vault of Loria. It holds relics of power strong enough to turn the tide of war, she said, voice low and urgent. The medic crossed her arms and frowned. but these routes are old. They might be traps left by our enemies. Her warning hung in the air as the Guardian's eyes flickered. It knew these pathways. It remembered once guiding other ships safely through them. Drums of distant thunder rolled across the moon's surface as the pilot brought the ship closer to a hidden docking station carved into the side of a cliff. The engines hummed low and steady as they aligned with ancient rails. The station's door slid open with a hiss, revealing a tunnel lit by failing torches. Dust drifted in the dim light and settled on rusted machinery the crew stepped into. The corridor behind the Guardian, each footstep echoing on the metal floor. The engineer held a portable scanner to the wall, beeps and boops sounding as it read the inscriptions. These markings speak of a Guardian code and a hidden key, she said, translating simple glyphs into their own language. The crew followed the Guardian deeper into the tunnel, hearts pounding in the silence. At the end they found a massive door carved with the Guardian's emblem, gears, and pistons. Had frozen in place long ago. Vines crept through cracks and coiled around rusted bolts. The Guardian placed its hand on the door. Sensors hummed as ancient locks responded to its touch. Light flickered along the grooves, and the door began to shift. Heavy stone moving with a grinding roar. The crew shielded their ears as the door slid open to reveal a vast chamber filled with star maps carved into the walls. Each panel glowed with soft green light. The ceiling arched high above them. Pillars pulsed with latent power. In the center of the room stood a pedestal holding a crystal orb. Its surface rippled like water. The orb projected a live map of the galaxy. Points of light danced across its surface where supply depots and weapons caches still lay hidden. The captain whispered, "This is the key to victory," but the engineers' scanner beeped wildly. "I'm reading unknown energy signatures moving toward us," she warned. Panic rippled through the crew as shadows flickered at the edge of the chamber. The Guardian raised a towering arm to shield the humans, its eyes blazing with resolve. Then, from the darkness beyond the pillars, a voice echoed, cold and mocking, "So the Guardian lives again. And with you, the map will be ours." The words sent tremors through the air, and in that moment, the chamber's lights snapped off, plunging them into darkness as unseen forces closed in. Pale light from distant stars cast long wavering shadows across the black ice as the ship's landing struts sank into the frozen ground. Its hull released a soft hiss as the ramp lowered. The crew hesitated for a moment at the threshold, breath visible in the thin air. Before stepping onto the moon's surface, the Guardian led the way, its massive feet leaving deep impressions in the ice and snow, each step echoing in the silent night. The moon's landscape was a mix of jagged rocks and smooth plains of glassy ice. Broken craters glowed with faint blue light from unknown minerals. Wind swept over the surface in gusts that rattled helmets and stirred dust. The crew adjusted their straps and checked their scanners. The engineer pointed to distant silhouettes of ancient structures half buried in snowdrifts. They moved toward a fallen tower, its tip broken off and buried in a nearby crater. Vines and pale fungus crawled over its base as if trying to claim it for the moon. The Guardian touched the cold metal of the tower gently, and sensors hummed at the contact. The crew gathered around a scanning device. Readings flickered. This structure had once served as an entrance to deeper tunnels carved beneath the surface. A soft click echoed as a hidden hatch slowly opened in the ice, revealing a spiral staircase veined with glowing cracks. The pilot shone a light downward, revealing slick walls, slick with frost and old stains. The captain signaled to descend. Each climber gripped the rail and slid carefully down. Below them lay a wide tunnel lit by broken lanterns swaying in a faint breeze, their light weak but enough to cast dancing shadows on the walls. The tunnel floor was uneven with piles of rock and debris that snapped and crunched underfoot. Strange markings covered the walls, shapes of spirals, lines, and dots that repeated in cryptic patterns. The engineer knelt and traced a finger along one glyph, whispering, "This says, 'In darkness we guard, but in unity we awaken.'" The crew exchanged wary looks. Unsure whether the message warned them or invited them, suddenly, a low growl echoed. From the darkness ahead, the group froze, lights of their helmets swinging as they searched for the source. Pairs of glowing eyes reflected in the beam. Creatures skittered along the walls and ceiling, their limbs spindly but powerful. They moved with surprising speed. Dozens of them darted toward the group with screeches that sent ice flakes fluttering. From the ceiling, the Guardian stepped forward, raising its arm to shield the crew. Lines of energy crackled along its armor. It held a hand out to form a barrier of light that threw the creatures back into the shadows. The crew watched in awe as the Guardian's power formed a glowing dome. Momentarily safe them, the creatures hissed and banged against the barrier but could not pass. The captain breathed. "It protects us even here." Voice trembling with relief, beyond the creatures. The tunnel forked into a chamber sealed by a heavy door carved with the Guardian's emblem. Frost covered its surface. Vines choked the edges and clung to rusted locks. The engineer approached with a portable torch, flame wavering as she warmed. The frost cracked and melted. Gears inside the door began to turn with a grinding roar. Light spilled from beneath in a thin line. The door swung inward to reveal a vault lit by rows of dim lamps that flickered like dying stars. At its center stood a pedestal covered in frost and vines. Atop it lay a crystalline key that glowed with pale green light. The orb of ancient power rested beside it. Its surface cracked but still pulsing. The captain gasped. "We found it, the weapon that can save worlds," she whispered. But before they could step closer, a deep rumble shook the chamber. Dust and debris fell from the ceiling, the ground quaked beneath their feet. The vault's lamps flickered and went out, plunging them into near darkness. Then, from the far corner of the room, something large and unseen shifted. A heavy sigh echoed, and a voice like grinding stone rumbled. "The Guardian has trespassed, now face the price of awakening." The crew raised their lights, revealing a towering form draped in dark energy, its eyes burning with rage as it stepped into view. The key and orb glowed in response, casting eerie shadows across the walls. The Guardian moved forward to stand between the intruder and the humans, its metal frame shining faintly, and in that moment the fate of all hung on the clash of old Guardians beneath the frozen sky. A sudden tremor rattled the frozen vault, dust falling from the vaulted ceiling as the crystal orb's light pulsed in warning. The crew braced themselves, helmets clinking against cold armor, heartbeats thundering in ears. The Guardian stepped forward, massive metal feet crunching on broken tiles, raising its arm to cast a protective glow over the humans. A low, resonant rumble came from the far shadows, and two glowing eyes burned through the darkness. The corrupted Guardian emerged, its metal frame twisted and warped by dark energy. Crackling veins of violet light ran across its chest and limbs. Its blades, once symbols of protection, now jagged and corrupted. It strode forward with predatory grace. The humans fell back behind. The Guardian, their scanners screaming with warnings of unstable power readings. The captain yelled, "Prepare defenses. Medic, shields online. Engineer, ready the orb's energy cells." The medic dashed to a console, fingers dancing over controls to activate protective barriers around the crew. Translucent walls of blue shimmered into being. The corrupted Guardian's voice rang through the chamber like grinding stone. "You awaken the Protector, only to slay him and claim his strength." Its tone mocking and cold, it raised a warped blade, energy flickering at its edge. It swung toward the original Guardian, sparks flying as steel met steel. The impact echoed like thunder. The Guardian roared with power, its own armor flaring bright green as it parried the strike. Arcs of energy shot from their clash, lighting the chamber in staccato flashes. Ancient runes along the walls glowed in response, humming with latent magic. The crew watched in awe, breath caught at the ferocity of two titans locked in battle. The engineer carried the crystal orb from the pedestal, its cracked surface glowing. With promise, she chanted soft words she had pieced together from the runes. "Light of hope, bind the dark, returned the Guardian to sacred spark. The orb's glow intensified as she held it aloft. Lines of green light arced toward the corrupted form, but the Dark Guardian flung them aside like shadows. Fractured debris rained down as the Guardians clashed. The ground fractured beneath their feet. The humans huddled behind shields, energy. Blast searing stone pillars. The captain barked, "We need to draw it away." Floor collapse in 5 seconds. She pointed to a wall of runes that pulsed angrily. The medic tapped her, "Come. Evacuate now. Go to the ramp. Move." The crew sprinted toward the door, sliding on icy patches. The engineer stumbled, but the medic caught her, pulling her to her feet. They reached the entrance just as the corrupted Guardian unleashed a shockwave, knocking flying stone and ice across the vault. The Guardian charged forward, intercepting the blast, sacrificing space to protect the crew in the narrow corridor. Alarms blared red. The pilot raced to seal the door behind them, locking heavy bolts with a hydraulic hiss. The wind of collapsing chamber rattled the hull. Cracks snaked across stone as the vault groaned. The orb's glow dimmed behind locked gears. Back inside, the Guardian and its corrupted twin clashed again, the floor beneath them giving way in jagged lines. They fell into a lower gallery littered with ancient weapons and rusted artifacts. The corrupted Guardian roared triumphantly, lifting its blade to strike a final blow. But the Protector countered, driving its fist into the deck, sending ripples of light that momentarily stunned the foe. A distant explosion rocked the vault as the corridor they had come from collapsed, sealing any hope of rescue. The Guardian's eyes flickered with regret, but it turned toward the corrupted Guardian, raising both arms in defiance. Channels of pure energy traced the runes in its armor, forging a shield of light between it and the dark twin. Above them, the vault's ceiling cracked, beams of frozen stalactites shaking loose. The corrupted Guardian's laughter echoed as it prepared a finishing strike. The Protector braced, and in that heart-stopping moment, the orb's glow flared through the sealed door behind them, green light flooding the chamber as though breaking the walls themselves. The corrupted Guardian hissed, energy draining from its veins. Vines carved into the walls pulsed in response. Glowing with life, the Protector charged forward with a roar, colliding blade to blade, a blinding flash that shook the anchors of the moon itself. When the light faded, the corrupted form shattered into shards of black metal and vanishing energy. Silence fell, broken only by the drip of melting ice. The Protector stood, battered but resolute, its green glow soft and steady. It turned toward the sealed door, energy resonating in its chest cavity, a low hum that hinted at victory and warning with a heavy step. It approached the collapsed entrance. The humans peered through cracks in the door, eyes wide with relief and wonder. The captain whispered, "He saved us." And himself, the engineer, clutched the orb tightly, cushioning it against her heart. Tears of triumph glinted under her helmet, but as they watched, the vault trembled once more. Dark shadows danced across the cracked door, and a new rumble shook the halls. A voice whispered from the darkness, softer yet colder than before, "This was only the beginning. The darkness knows you are awake." The Protector turned toward the voice. Glowing eyes narrowed, energy pulses rippling across its armor. The crew braced for the next storm, as the moon's core thrummed with an ominous heartbeat, promising challenges yet to come. Across the silent void, lights flickered into motion as the Allies answered the call. Human and alien warships from distant colonies jumped through hidden corridors guided by the Guardian's ancient maps. They emerged in scattered formations around the dark fleet, massing at the edge of a nebula, colors of blue, silver, and green. Shining against blackness, the gargantuan vessels spaced evenly, crews ready at their posts, hearts pounding with hope and fear alike. On the deck of the flagship, the Guardian stood beside the captain as sensors hummed and stars whirled past. The viewport, small fighters darted between cruisers like fireflies, their pilots waving arms in greeting. The captain spoke into her come, urging each fleet to hold formation, her voice calm and strong. She trusted the Guardian's plan even when she did not fully understand the ancient tactics etched into its mind. The engineer moved quickly among the officers, checking shields and energy cells. She pressed a vial of glowing crystal dust into the medic's hand, explaining how to strengthen the barriers with the orb's power. The medic nodded and distributed the dust to each station. Lights pulsed along the bulkheads as defenders infused shields with living energy. Farther out, alien allies adjusted their sails on gravitic frigates, stretching panels of bright green that caught the faint light of the nebula they hummed with. Power harvested from cosmic particles. Their crews cheered as the Guardian's silhouette appeared on every screen. A beacon of solidarity in an indifferent galaxy. Translators repeated the ancient phrase it spoke. United, we stand. Divided, we fall. Below decks, the human fighters of the first squadron prepared jets of energy flares for the coming assault. Pilots strapped into cockpits and tested controls. One young pilot turned to a friend and said softly, "This is more than a fight. It is our chance to show we are worthy of the stars." His friend grinned and clenched his fists, eager to prove himself. In the strategy room, holographic tablets floated above the table, showing the fortress at the heart of the fleet. Its walls bristled with dark guns and energy spires. Sensors marked weak spots deep within its structure. The Guardian traced lines with a heavy finger, revealing new paths and blind spots that no scanner had ever found. The captain studied the revealed routes and nodded. "We strike at dawn. Follow the Guardian's lead, and we will break their lines," she said. Morning came like a sudden hush. Stars receded as the fortress grew larger on the viewports. A ring of dark fighters swirled like crows around its ramparts. Fighters launched from every side as the Guardian raised an arm to signal the charge. Thunder rumbled across space as energy beams lit the darkness. Allied ships responded in unison, flares bursting in arcs of white and blue. The first clash was fierce and bright, lasers cutting arcs through the void. Explosions bloomed like flowers of light. The Guardian led a squad of heavy cruisers into the thick of battle, its gauntlet pulsing with green energy as it punched through. Enemy shields, small fighters formed around it like guardian bees defending their hive. Yet even as the tide of battle turned, a new threat emerged beyond the fortress walls. A shadow deeper than space itself, a shape so massive that it swallowed nearby stars. The Guardian's sensors flared with warnings and all eyes turned toward the abyss. The captain's voice crackled. "Overcomes, brace for impact. The real enemy is here." In that moment, hope and terror met in the hearts of every soul aboard the flagship. As the Guardian raised both arms and prepared to confront a darkness older than time, the rally of the stars had only just begun. The stars blinked out one by one as the enemy mothership loomed over Earth's last defense station, its enormous hull casting a shadow so vast it turned day into dusk. The battlefield lay silent for a moment, the calm before the storm. Below, Earth's orbital defenses lit up in preparation. Long-barreled cannons rotated toward the sky, their lights blinking like a heartbeat. Aboard the human flagship, tension choked the command deck. The crew watched as the darkness crept across the sky. The Guardian stood motionless at the center of the bridge, staring into the black abyss where the dark vessel hovered. Its green glow now stronger, brighter, energy rising through its armor. Like a tide, the captain turned to the crew, voice calm but firm. "This is the final stand. If we fall here, Earth falls with us." Pilots nodded, techs checked power levels, and the engineer activated the final sequence on the star map embedded in the crystal orb. Pathways lit up in the air, pointing directly toward the enemy ships. Weak point: a hidden energy core buried beneath layers of shadow armor. Suddenly, the enemy mothership spoke, its voice like static and thunder combined. "Return the Guardian to the void, and we will spare your world." The captain stood tall, unfazed. "We don't negotiate with darkness," she replied. The Guardian stepped forward, raising its arm to signal the attack. Fleets surged forward. At once, the Allied forces closing in on the enemy formation. Laser fire and plasma bolts lit the sky. Like a storm of stars exploding in every direction, the Guardian launched from the flagship. Flying straight toward the enemy ship, meteors of energy trailing behind it, its eyes locked on the heart of darkness inside the enemy mothership. Tendrils of black energy coiled around ancient tech, the corrupted AI that once controlled stars. Now turned to devour them. It recognized the Guardian's signal and shrieked in digital rage. It fired hundreds of defense drones, dark and fast, but the Guardian cut through them like light through fog, each strike purposeful, each motion. Reminder of what it was built to be. The engineer watched from the bridge, hands trembling as she monitored the orb's feedback. The Guardian was losing power rapidly. The core was fighting back with everything it had. But the map revealed a final move. One strike, one location. A buried node where the darkness anchored its entire fleet. He has one shot, the engineer whispered. He has to get to the node. The Guardian fought its way to the heart of the ship, slamming through sealed doors, dodging energy traps, each room darker than the last, until finally, it reached a massive chamber where the enemy core floated, pulsating like a dying star. Vines of black energy crawled up the walls. The voice returned, now more desperate than cold. You were made to serve. Not to fight us. The Guardian stepped forward, lights burning with emerald fury. It did not answer with words. It raised its arm, forming the ancient seal of protection, and slammed it into the core. A flash, a roar, and silence, the shockwave, shattered the hull of the enemy mothership, energy bursting in every direction, like a sun being born. The darkness howled as it unraveled. Fleets above Earth saw the black clouds split apart, their engines free of disruption, enemy ships spiraling, collapsing, vanishing into trails of light. On the bridge, the captain stood breathless. Is he alive? She asked. The engineer stared at the screens, heart pounding, then gasped as one light blinked on. Floating above the shattered remains of the core, the Guardian drifted, armor cracked, one arm missing, but its eyes still glowed. Earth was safe. But just as the crew began to cheer, a final shadow crept from the edge of space, larger than anything before, not a ship but a shape. A wound in the stars, and a voice colder than death itself whispered across all frequencies. You have delayed the end, but you cannot stop it. The Guardian turned slowly, staring into the void, and prepared for what was to come. The battle was won, but the war for the stars had only just begun.